Hi, this is Irfan from the Universe Guru, and today I have a very interesting topic. As you know, our channel, we talk about minimalism as well as financial independence, and they both kind of overlap a lot, they depend on each other. But we haven't talked much about why, right? Why do we talk about it, other than saying that both of them impact happiness? But let's question that a little bit and kind of go a little bit more higher level, and even think about happiness as the objective, which is the topic for today. And I'm going to look at it from a little bit more of a scientific, mathematical way, if you will, just to see what the objective of life should be and how do we go about achieving that and optimizing that. So to talk about that, the first concept I will talk about is this thing called the y equals to function of x. In mathematics, we have variables, right? And the two types of variables are, the one is the independent variable and one is the dependent variable. So what does that mean? So y is usually referred to as the dependent variable, something that you care about, something that you're trying to optimize, right? Increase, decrease, or set to a certain level. And that is something that is the y. And then on the graph, usually that's plotted on the vertical axis. The x or x's are independent variables, or the factors that influence y, right? So they have a cause and effect relationship with the y. So as you change those x's, the value of the x's, it influences some shape or form the y. So those are the two types of things, right? Y's and x's. And it's not just one y and some x's. It's a hierarchy that can go up and down, right? So things that affect the y, the x's, they themselves could be a y for something else, right? So things that may impact them and then kind of goes on. And then on the way up, you can also have something that is even above that in the hierarchy. And, so it's kind of like a hierarchy, right? So those are the two types of things. So what does it have to do with anything that we're talking about? Well, so the first thing is, when you're trying to optimize anything or improve something, you always want to start with the why, the things that you care about, and not the x's, because you look at your life and say, okay, what do I want to achieve? What do I want to improve? And the question basically you're asking is, what is my why, or whys, right? If you have more than one, also known as the objective function, right? What am I trying to achieve or optimize? And then say, okay, which x's will help me? X's are really the knobs, right? If I turn the knob, it influences the y. So a very simple example, just to explain the relationship between y and x is, if you have a spring and you're trying to apply, if you're applying force on it, it stretches that, right? It will make it longer. And in that case, this is a linear relationship, so the more force I apply, the more it will change the length. So in this case, what is the dependent variable? The dependent variable is the length, right? The length depends on how much force I'm applying on it. Does that make sense? So the force will be the x, and the displacement or the elongation will be the y. So that's just one example, right? So the question is, what is the objective function or the y for us as humans? And it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. And we've been saying, a lot that, you do this because it will make you happier. So the assumption is that happiness is the ultimate why, and which is true for a lot of people, right? A lot of people you would hear saying that the ultimate thing that we're all trying to optimize is happiness, and all these other things are x's or sub x's that all impact some shape or form happiness. So the question is happiness the ultimate why or not? And I'll argue for a lot of people, yes. However, there are always exceptions. You may have certain beliefs, you may have certain mindset that could come from some beliefs, and that may be telling you some purpose of life, for example, right? And I'm not going to go there, but so you may have certain beliefs that tell you that this is the objective of life, and that may not be happiness. It may not necessarily conflict with happiness, but that would make it happiness as something that is a secondary variable, and the main objective is something else, and you could be happy as long as it doesn't conflict with that. In some cases, I don't know, maybe the belief that you have may be directly specifying that thou shalt not be happy. So unless that is the case, happiness could still be relevant, right? So unless you're told that you're not supposed to be happy, happiness is an objective function along with some other whys, and we'll talk about in a second how you can juggle multiple whys. So that brings us to happiness as potentially a why. And then, so the question is, our topics, financial independence and minimalism, how do they fit in? And in our opinion, those are both X's. Achieving financial happiness gives you happiness. Minimalism is another tool that gives you happiness. So both are the X's that influence your happiness. The question is, how are they related to each other, right? So is minimalism, if I'm just looking at minimalism and financial independence, is there, how do they go together, right? I mean, do they influence each other? Yes or no? Yes, probably it does. But so which is the Y, which is the X? So interestingly, I thought about that. And the relationship between them is actually both ways. Both are X's and Y's to each other, because the cause and effect relationship is kind of a little bit circular, which is a good thing actually. So let me explain that in a little bit. So for example, minimalism can enable financial independence. So if you're, let's say you set a goal that you want to have financial independence because you want to be happy, minimalistic lifestyle will help you get to financial independence, because a lot of the tools that we've talked about, having a better savings rate by focusing on, and in this case, when the financial independence is kind of focusing on one of the currencies that minimalism talks about, which is money. But even from money standpoint, minimalism will help you focus on spending money at the right places, and therefore it will help you have a better savings rate, which will help you have financial independence both ways. One is the savings rate, and also so you're saving faster, but also because of a minimalistic lifestyle, your target becomes easier, because I don't have to accumulate $1 bazillion to be financially independent, because I have a minimalistic lifestyle which doesn't need a lot of money, because if I just focus on the things that are important to me, it doesn't take that whole lot, right? So in that case, minimalism is helping financial independence, right? So financial independence seems to be the why. Well, if you turn it around, financial independence also enables minimalism, because minimalistic lifestyle is saying that I want to use my resources, which are time, money, and energy, in a way that helps me the most, right? The things that are more important to me. And by getting financial independence, it helps you do that better, because once you take the money out of that, then I can better prioritize and focus on things that are more important to me, right? Because a lot of times, you're spending so much of your energy and time on accumulating just one currency, which is money, and that takes away from what matters to you, which is having quality time. So that way, both are impacting each other. Both are X's and Y's to each other, which is a good thing. That means you got to have a little bit of a circular reference, which is good, because once you embark on those two things at the same time, you will notice that both will help feed each other, right? So you'll start off by maybe you're triggered by either one of them, doesn't matter. Maybe you started off on the financial independence, and then you kind of use minimalism to kickstart that a little bit, and then you'll realize that that's helping, and then the cycle goes on, right? So the financial independence enables you to be more minimalistic, and you say, hey, I can retire early, and therefore I can focus on something that I really care about. Like, for example, for me, I want to focus more on philosophy and physics, which is my passion. So the financial independence part of the journey is a motivator for me, because once I get that, then I can focus on what's important to me. At the same time, the minimalistic lifestyle that we have is also accelerating the financial independence itself. Does that make sense? So that's why it's a good thing to have a circular references in something where both of them are good things, right? Both are Y's for us, which are X's to happiness, and so both working together, it's a really good thing. So the key again is that you have to define your whys, and that's the key word, is your, right? Because a lot of times we set about without taking a step back and really thinking about it and pausing for a second. We just get along with the conventional whys. Even if I mean, it depends on what level you're talking about, right? So is starting with happiness, for example, is that what you want? And for most people, you'll probably say yes. But then when you go one layer down and think about what are the things that bring you happiness, that's where we don't take a step back and really think about it, and we just go along with the conventional knobs, right? And we're trying to optimize something with a model that doesn't work for us, right? So everybody is different. Everybody has their own model. And by model, I mean equation, right? The y equals to function of x. Function means, dependent on x, right? So that has an equation, and all those x's, again, you can think of them as knobs. You can turn them to optimize the y. And if you're trying to turn a knob that is not affecting your y the right way, or it doesn't have any impact, and you can keep turning that forever, it's not going to do the right thing for you, right? So like, for example, if you're using the consumerism knob, that seems to be a common thing, that everybody else believes that consumerism will bring you happiness, and you're turning that knob and it's not making you happy, and not only that, it's probably moving it in the wrong direction. It's making you unhappy to some extent. So that's the thing, right? You have to figure out, one, what's your why, and if it's happiness, let's talk about how do we find the right factors, the right X's that influence happiness. Now, once again, you may have other whys in addition to or instead of happiness, right? So if you may be constrained that you're not supposed to be happy, or something that is really in conflict with that, for most people probably not. But if you do, you can have multiple whys, and then we'll talk about can you optimize both at the same time. So for example, another example for Y's and X's is, if you're trying to optimize a recipe, right? So let's say you cook, you're baking a cake, right? And so what's important about a cake? So probably the taste of the cake is important, for example. Then you'll figure out which ingredients are going to make the cake better. Those are the X's, and in which amount, right? So you are turning those knobs to optimize the cake, and that's how a lot of people have optimized recipes. And you come up with the cake that is the most delicious cake possible. But then you may have another why, and says that the cake has to be healthy. And some of the ingredients that may be making the cake tastier, like sugar or a lot of fats, may be in conflict with the other why, right? So then you have to juggle them. If you're lucky, sometimes what happens is the same recipe the same optimization works for multiple X's or multiple Y's, right? So while I'm making the cake healthier, it also makes it tastier. Unfortunately, the way we've evolved, in terms of food at least, these are always usually in conflict, because the things that are usually, I'm not just saying always, but usually things that are tastier are not necessarily healthier. So then you have to juggle that, and then you even have to say, not all Y's are created equal, right? So which Y is more important? Do I optimize the health, or do I optimize the taste? And those are the decisions that influence our health, in many cases, right? But in some cases, you may be lucky, and you could get everything out of the same recipe. So the key is to influence, to find the X's in your life that influence your Y's, and if it's happiness, then figure out which those X's are. So how do I do that, right? Well, a couple of approaches. One is experimentation, and that's how scientifically, in a lab, people find out these relationships between X and Y, right? So I'm trying to find out what settings of the parameters make something better. What we do is we change those in a controlled environment, the X's, and see the effect of the Y, right? And that's called design of experiments, for example. And then you figure out, right, what is that model, how does that do mathematically, and then you'll find that sweet spot, right? So these settings, optimize what I'm looking for in terms of my why. So experimentation is one thing, and you can do that with your life, right? So as you are living your life, you're always in a mode of experimentation, because you are on a day-to-day decision that you make is influencing your happiness in positive or negative way, right? So if you just be a little bit conscious of what you're doing, you can turn your life into an experiment that helps you optimize your whys. That's one thing. So that's as you go forward. But also, you probably have a lot of data already, right? So if you just reflect back, so if you've been, like, let's say, not too happy, or your contentment level is not as much as you would like to be, reflect back and see, and try to empirically, find that, at least on a qualitative level. You're not going to find a mathematical equation, but on a qualitative level, you can see, what things have you tried, which way you're turning the knobs, and which way the Y's are going. And if it turns out that you keep turning the same knob over and over, and it's not finding you happiness, chances are that's the model, right? It's not, you're not pushing on the right knobs. So just by reflection, you can do that. Now, so this is like the a little bit primitive approach, right? Just looking at the experimental data, right? Empirical data, and I've talked about this before. The study by Dan Gilbert, who is the expert in happiness, right? And we're talking about happiness, so I cannot not mention him because he mentioned that about 2 million years ago, when we developed the humans, to get an evolutionary advantage, we developed this frontal lobe in the brain that helps us learn things not only by experimentation but also by imagination. So which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because it keeps us out of danger, and that's why evolution supported that, right? So I can find out a lot of things that are risky without actually going there. I can imagine in my head that if I go there, something will happen. But the downside of that is also that when we try to use our predictability of future, we try to find out happiness, and sometimes the model that we have is not correct, right? Because evolution doesn't care that we predict happiness perfectly, right? It's not going to kill you if you're not happy necessarily. So that's why sometimes it's better to just go with the primitive approach and just see the experiments. If you have experimental data, then that's not that bad to use that, right? So look at the data, look at the evidence, look at your past and present, and try to see those correlations, right? What is making me happy, what's not, and just be a little bit honest about it, right? Maybe you've been turning the wrong knobs, right? I mean, you're trying to turn a knob that doesn't have any influence on the why. It's not, you're not going to get there. Or you may be turning the right knobs in the wrong direction, right? Or more than necessary, right? So a lot of the diminishing returns. So for example, if you are looking at money to get more happiness, you may be past the diminishing return point, and then any incremental amount is not driving as much happiness because and then some data shows, I think there's different reports, but some people say between $60,000 to $70,000 for in the U.S. If you make that much a year, then yes, more may bring you happiness, but it's the incremental amount is not that much. So is it worth spending time for that increment that is not giving you the return, right? So again, remember, minimalism is all about prioritizing your resources, and so is that a happy trade-off, right? So if I'm turning the right knob, but I'm turning it too much. And then again, factor in the if the settings are in conflict with the other whys that you may have from beliefs or some other reasons. So if something is making you happy but not from a spiritual standpoint or some other standpoint conflict with something else, you can evaluate that. Probably in most cases it will not, unless you're doing something unethical, right? So if you're trying to find an unethical way to make yourself happy, chances are your moral values or whatever will tell you not to be, and then inside you're not going to be happy anyway. So I think in most cases when people think some things are in conflict with happiness, they're really not, because it's very difficult to be happy in an unethical way. That's my opinion on it. So that was my take on kind of the philosophy of life in some kind of high-level mathematical way, the cause and effect relationship. So again, the message is try to find out your goals, and we always say you have to start with the goals, but in this message we're kind of going a little bit higher and saying what is your overall objective function in life, what is your why. So it's kind of a sanity check, right? I mean, so imagine living a life of like 6, 7, 8 decades trying to optimize the wrong variable for yourself, right? So your inherent goal should have been something else, your why should have been something else, and you are optimizing a why that is perceived by by the society, and you're just trying to push that, and you're devoting your whole life moving the needle in the wrong, in the direction that doesn't matter to you. That's the wrong objective function. Or you have it figured out. You for example, for you want to be happy, but you are not looking at the correlations correctly. So what influences happiness? Those X's that you are trying to move the Y are incorrect. There's no correlation, or the wrong inverse correlation, and therefore you keep turning them, and then end up not being happy. So the key is being honest with yourself and reflect back, and just I think it's worth spending. We're talking decades of life. Is definitely worth spending a few moments once in a while, reflecting back and kind of checking those correlations, right? What's going on, rather than kind of just flow through it. Reflect back and say, okay, what's working, what's not working. Again, it's an experiment, right? Your life is an experiment. Use the data, right? It's a free experiment. You're living your life anyway, right? You don't have to do anything extra. So while you have the data, might as well use that at least from a qualitative way and see what's working, what's not working. Am I optimizing the right thing? And have I found the right knobs? And chances are, in most cases, the knobs are not that many. A few things have, this is known as the Pareto effect. The number of things that affect anything are not that many, or the 80-20 rule, as we call it, right? 80% of the impact is because of 20% of the things. So find those 20% of the things for you, right? What are the things that move the why in the right direction for you, and then focus on those things. And that again is, definition of minimalism, right? Focusing on the things that are important to you. We did a full circle and came around back with the math, and that's exactly what it is. Pareto principle is minimalism. You focus on what's important, not the trivial many, the vital few. And so the message is optimize the right objective for yourself. So hopefully that was useful. Hopefully this is a little bit philosophical, but hopefully this will give you a kind of a different perspective on minimalism and financial independence in the context of general purpose of life, happiness, or something even above that. So feel free to subscribe, and I would really like to see some comments on that, because it's a little bit touchy and philosophical. So would like to see some comments, and if you agree with that, you like it, please share with your friends on social media. So we'll appreciate that. Thanks a lot.